He's picked us. Out of every club circling him right now, Real Madrid, PSG, Arsenal, Liverpool, Matheus Fernandes has looked at all of them and said Manchester United is where he wants to go. That's not nothing. That's actually massive, because we've been burned before. We've been the club that had to chase players who didn't want to be here, who saw us as a backup option, who went through the motions because their agent pointed them our way. And when that happens, everyone can feel it. The player feels it, the fans feel it, the dressing room feels it. So when I tell you this 21-year-old Portuguese midfielder, one of the most sought-after young players in European football right now, has been asked to choose between the Bernabeu and Old Trafford and picked Old Trafford, that genuinely matters. But here's where it gets complicated, because wanting to come and actually arriving are two very different things. And right now there is a very real gap, a significant, frustrating, deal-breaking sized gap between what West Ham want for this player and what Manchester United are prepared to pay. That gap is the entire story right now. Everything hinges on whether that gap closes. I'm Bella, welcome back to Bella MUFC Analysis, and if you're new here, this is where we dig into what's actually happening at United, not just repeat headlines. If that sounds like your kind of channel, hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps. Now let's get into this. So let me set the scene properly. Because to understand why this transfer matters so much, you have to understand the position United are in right now heading into this summer. Michael Carrick has inherited a midfield situation that needs serious surgery. Casemiro is leaving. Manuel Ugarte is almost certainly following him out the door. That's 2 senior midfielders gone. 2, and United have already moved to address that by agreeing a deal with Atalanta for Ederson Silva, a proper defensive midfielder who brings energy and press resistance to a department that has been crying out for it. But Ederson is one piece of the puzzle. Carrick wants more. The idea is a genuine midfield rebuild, not patching holes but actually constructing something new, something that works. And when you think about what the best midfields in the Premier League look like right now, you understand why the next signing matters so much. That's where Matheus Fernandes comes in. And look, I want to be honest here. Before this season, how many of us would have said his name without hesitation? He went to West Ham last summer, a side that spent most of the year in absolute chaos. Relegation fight from practically the start, managers struggling, confidence shot. And in the middle of all that misery, this kid, 21 years old, stood out, consistently. He was one of the few players at the London Stadium who looked like he belonged at a higher level, which is bittersweet for West Ham fans, but means everything for the clubs now trying to sign him. Fabrizio Romano confirmed it earlier this week. United have been in direct conversations with the players' agents. Not background work, not a casual inquiry. Direct conversations. About transfer fees, about wages. That tells you where United are in this process. They're not kicking the tyres, they're trying to drive the car off the forecourt. Now here's the part that will frustrate every United fan watching this. West Ham want between 80 and 85 million pounds for Matheus Fernandes. Manchester United's opening offer is going to be somewhere around 65 million pounds. That is a 15 to 20 million pounds gap, and that gap is the entire problem right now. You might be thinking, well, West Ham are relegated. They need the money. They'll have to drop the price eventually. And that logic isn't wrong. They absolutely are in a difficult financial position. Relegation hits clubs hard, and West Ham are going to need to raise serious cash through player sales to have any chance of bouncing back up. So the theory that Ineos are playing a waiting game, letting the financial pressure build, hoping West Ham blink first, that theory makes sense. But here's what makes this complicated. Here's what keeps me up at night as a United fan watching this unfold. West Ham paid £38 million for Fernandes last summer, £38 million, and they are now looking at doubling their money. That's not just greed. Well, it partly is, but it's also based on something real, because this market is absolutely brutal. The Premier League premium is a genuine phenomenon. Clubs know that English clubs pay more. West Ham know that whoever signs Fernandes is going to benefit enormously from his development, and they want compensation for that. And they're not wrong that he's worth a significant fee. The issue is the size of the gap between what he's worth and what's being asked. Sky Sports ran a piece this week asking whether there's a Premier League premium attached to Fernandes, and that's actually a really interesting question, because yes, he had a good season, but a good season in a relegated side, how much does that really tell us? How much do we extrapolate? He's never played in a genuinely successful, high-functioning team. He's never been tested at that level consistently. He is, and I say this with absolute respect for what he's shown, a player with enormous potential who is yet to prove that potential in the biggest moments. That context matters when you're talking about paying £80 million. Now I have to talk about the elephant in the room, the elephant wearing a black coat, waving his arms around on the touchline. Jose Mourinho. Real Madrid have a new manager, and that manager is Portuguese. And one of the first things Mourinho reportedly did after getting the job was mention Matheus Fernandes to the Madrid hierarchy. Now, I want to be clear about something here. There's a difference between a manager flagging a player to a club and that club actually moving for him. According to journalist Sean Connolly, who has been one of the most reliable voices on this story, Fernandes is one of several players that Mourinho admires at Madrid, but he is not a priority right now. That's the word, not a priority. And on top of that, Fernandes himself has reportedly given his preference to Manchester United, not Madrid, United. But the agent situation is where it gets murky. Fernandes is represented by Jorge Mendes, and if you know anything about how Jorge Mendes operates in football, and if you're a United fan, you absolutely should, you know that he doesn't just represent players. He shapes their careers, he engineers situations, he has relationships with Real Madrid that go back decades. And according to reports, Mendes is actively working to push Fernandes towards the Bernabeu rather than Old Trafford. So you've got a situation where the player personally prefers United, but his agent is trying to pull him towards Madrid. That's a fascinating and slightly nerve-wracking dynamic. Because players don't always win that battle against their own agents, especially when the agent is as powerful as Mendes and the alternative destination is Real Madrid. What gives United some protection here is that Madrid apparently haven't made a concrete move yet. They've expressed admiration. Mourinho has flagged the name. But there's no formal bid, no serious negotiation, no real urgency from Los Blancos as of right now. Fernandes isn't the priority they're building their summer around. So the question becomes, how long does that stay true? How long before Mourinho decides he actually does want him? How long before Mendes gets Madrid genuinely interested? United can't afford to wait forever. The advantage they have right now, the players' preference, the ongoing talks, the relationship between Jason Wilcox and Fernandes that dates back to his time at Southampton, none of that lasts indefinitely. Let me talk about Jason Wilcox for a second, because this is actually a really interesting subplot to this whole story. Wilcox is United's director of football. Before United, he was at Southampton. And according to Team Talks insider Graham Bailey, Wilcox was actually instrumental in getting Fernandes to Southampton in the first place, identifying him at Sporting CP, seeing what he could become, laying the groundwork for that move. He was a huge admirer then, and he's remained a huge admirer since leaving the South Coast. That means United don't just have a financial interest in Fernandes, they have a personal one. Wilcox knows this player. He's followed him for years. He watched him develop from Sporting's academy, through Estoril on loan, to Southampton, to West Ham. He's seen every step of this journey. And apparently nearly every department at United, the data team, the scouts, the recruitment team, all love him. That kind of internal alignment is actually really rare. Clubs often have debates about transfers, arguments about priorities, different factions pulling in different directions. When everyone is on the same page about a player, that usually means the deal gets done. It might take time, it might require some back and forth, but the intent is clear. The trump card, as Bailey described it, is that relationship. Fernandes trusts the people at United who are pursuing him. That's not insignificant. Let me zoom out for a second though, because I think there's a bigger picture question here that goes beyond just this one player. What does Matheus Fernandes actually give Manchester United? When you watch him, the thing that stands out immediately is his ability to receive the ball under pressure and move out of it. He's technically very clean. He's comfortable on both feet. He reads the game intelligently. He finds pockets of space. He understands angles. He connects play. In a lot of ways, he reminds you of what Bruno Fernandes was before he became Bruno Fernandes. That kind of dynamic, technically gifted box-to-box profile with creativity running through it. And yes, the Bruno Fernandes connection is deliberate. They're Portuguese. They play together for the national team. Matheus has apparently spoken about his admiration for Bruno, about wanting to link up with him at club level. That kind of relationship can actually be incredibly powerful in football. When you have a player joining a new environment and there's already an established connection with a teammate, someone who speaks the same language, who can ease the transition, who can bring them into the dressing room culture, it matters. It accelerates everything. Think about it from a tactical standpoint. Carrick wants to build a midfield that can press high, keep the ball, transition quickly, and contribute to both ends of the pitch. Ederson gives you the defensive anchor, the player who wins the ball back, who provides the platform. Fernandes potentially gives you the next layer, the player who makes things happen with it. The player who links the defence to the attack, who carries, who creates, who arrives in dangerous areas. That's a proper midfield spine. That's the kind of pairing that wins you things. Not just makes up the numbers. And here's something that I genuinely don't think gets discussed enough. Fernandes is 21. When people talk about the price being too high, I understand the argument. But they're not just buying what he is now, they're buying what he becomes over the next decade. They're buying the potential of a player who is already performing at a very high level at 21, who still has enormous room to grow, who is going to be approaching his absolute peak years in a Manchester United shirt if this move happens. That's actually a different calculation than buying a 27-year-old for the same fee. There's one more competitive element to this story that I want to address. Because it's not just Real Madrid in the background here. PSG are interested, Arsenal are interested, Liverpool apparently have an appreciation for the player. And the United Stand reported that there's a strong interest from City as well, though their attention has shifted primarily to other targets. The point is, if and when United's bid comes in below West Ham's valuation, there will be no shortage of clubs ready to step in. Arsenal specifically is interesting to me. They've been mentioned in connection with Fernandes multiple times, and they are absolutely in a position financially to compete for him. If Arsenal gets serious, this gets much harder for United very quickly. That's the pressure United are operating under. It's not just about whether Ineos are willing to negotiate harder with West Ham. It's about whether they can move fast enough, negotiate smart enough, before someone else takes advantage of their hesitation. And look, Ineos have shown they can be decisive when they need to be. The Edison deal was done relatively quickly and quietly. The intent is clearly there. But the price point on Fernandes is significantly higher, and Ineos have made it clear they are not going to be reckless. They are not going to get into bidding wars. They walked away from Elliot Anderson at £120 million. They will walk away from Fernandes too if the price goes beyond what they think is fair. The question is whether what they think is fair ever meets what West Ham think is fair. And right now there's a gap, a real gap, and someone is going to have to move. My honest read on this? I think this deal gets done. I think it gets done before the window properly opens because everyone involved wants it to get done. West Ham need the money. Fernandes wants to leave and has a destination in mind. United want him and have the resources. The pieces are there, but I don't think it happens at £65 million. And I don't think it happens at £85 million either. I think there's a compromise somewhere, maybe £72 to £75 million with add-ons. Something that lets West Ham say they got a serious fee, something that lets Ineos say they didn't overpay. The real risk is that the waiting game goes on too long, that Mourinho makes a proper move, that Mendes gets Madrid genuinely invested, that PSG throw a number at West Ham that ends the conversation. Because at that point, United's trump cards, the player's preference, the Wilcox relationship, the internal alignment, all of that becomes worthless if another club simply pays more. So my message to Ineos would be this. You've done the right things. You've identified the right player. You've done your homework. The player wants to come. Don't let this drag out so long that it falls apart. Move. Not recklessly, not wastefully, but move. United fans have watched too many summers where a target slips away because of hesitation, because of indecision, because of one too many meetings, one too many board discussions, one too many rounds of negotiation that go nowhere. Matheus Fernandes has told the world he wants Old Trafford. The worst thing United could do right now is make him regret that choice before he's even made it official. So I want to know what you think. Is £75 million the right number? Is he worth £80 million given his age and potential? And genuinely, how worried are you about the Jorge Mendes factor? About Real Madrid hanging around in the background? Let me know in the comments. Seriously, I read every single one, and these discussions are genuinely the best part of making this content. There's a lot more to come on this story. And honestly, with the World Cup starting and the summer window about to kick into full gear, the next few weeks are going to be absolutely hectic. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. He's chosen us. Now let's go get him.